The long corridors of Nexus Prime seemed endless. Metal walls stretched upward like the ribs of some massive beast, lights humming faintly above. Jake Morrison walked quickly but tried not to look nervous, clutching his datapad so tightly that his knuckles had turned white. The academy was overwhelming. It was bigger than any city he had seen on Earth, filled with thousands of alien cadets training for war. The noise of different languages surrounded him, soft musical tones, harsh clicks, guttural growls. He caught glimpses of creatures with 4 arms, others with wings folded tightly behind their backs, and a few that didn't even walk at all, floating instead on humming grav pads. Jake felt very small here. Only 3 humans studied at the Intergalactic Military Academy: himself, Lisa Chen from Mars Colony, and Tony Rodriguez from Europa Station. They kept close, a small island of humanity in a sea of species that often looked at them with polite amusement. But Jake, unlike Lisa and Tony, often preferred to be alone. It was easier to keep his secret that way. He had fought to be here. After humanity joined the Galactic Defense Coalition 5 years ago, the Academy had opened its doors to human cadets for the first time. Jake had passed every exam, every test, and every grueling simulation. On Earth, his teachers had praised his natural instincts for strategy, calling him gifted. But here, among aliens who had trained for centuries, that gift felt more like a curse. Most cadets treated humans like interesting pets. They weren't cruel, just dismissive, too weak, too slow, too untested. The instructors were polite but clearly expected little. To them, humans would never be real soldiers. Jake tried to ignore it, tried to blend into the background, tried to live like a normal cadet. But normal had never been possible for him, not since Kepler's station. He reached the classroom for advanced tactical warfare. Through the transparent wall, Jake saw alien cadets already seated. Tall, blue-skinned Zapirians with their angular faces and glittering eyes. Gray, 4-eyed Varians who loved to prove how clever they were. Massive, rock-skinned Corans whose fists could crush bone with a single squeeze. They were all bigger, faster, stronger, smarter. Jake swallowed, squared his shoulders, and walked inside. Conversation stopped for just a moment, enough for him to feel it. Dozens of alien eyes flicked his way, some curious, some irritated, others amused. Jake kept his gaze down, made for his usual corner seat, and tried to disappear. A hush fell as Admiral Kor entered. The Valkyrian instructor looked older than time itself. His gray skin was lined like stone, and 4 dark eyes seemed to see everything. He had fought wars across the galaxy for more than 2 centuries, medals glinting on his uniform. When he spoke, his deep voice carried the weight of history. "Today," Admiral Kor said, "we will study one of the most important battles in Coalition history, the Battle of Kepler Station." Jake's chest tightened, his stomach turned cold. The Admiral activated the holo display. Stars shimmered into view. In the center floated a large station with long, branching arms, Kepler Station, its lights flickering weakly. Around it, red dots began to swarm. Hive ships, dozens, hundreds. The Hive Collective launched a surprise assault, Admiral Kor explained. The station's defenses were unprepared. For 6 days, the Coalition lost ground, ships destroyed, shields failing. Command prepared to retreat and abandon Kepler Station to the enemy. A Zapirian cadet, Vex, raised a slender hand. "Admiral, our texts call this battle a turning point, but how was victory achieved if retreat was certain?" "That," Admiral Kor said, his eyes narrowing with something close to reverence, "is the mystery. In the final hours, an unknown warrior appeared. This individual destroyed 3 Hive destroyers single-handedly and rallied the survivors to victory." Jake's palms were slick with sweat, his chest ached. The words sounded far away, like echoes down a long tunnel. "The identity of this warrior," the Admiral continued, "remains classified, but their tactics," he paused, his 4 eyes scanning the room, "were unlike anything seen before. Military experts have studied them for 5 years, and today, for the first time, you will watch the recovered combat footage." Jake froze, his throat went dry. "No, not this. Please, not this." The room darkened as the display expanded, filling the space above their heads with the black of space. Stars glittered. Kepler Station hung in silence, battered but unbroken. Hive ships swarmed like insects around it, their purple beams slicing through Coalition defenders. Jake gripped the edge of his desk. His breathing quickened, his vision blurred at the edges. He remembered this. The smell of smoke and burning metal. The screams, the little girl crying. His own hands, too small, shaking as they worked controls built for adults. On the display, ships exploded in bright bursts of silent fire. Coalition vessels fell one by one. The hive closed in. Then the footage shifted. A new camera angle showed the interior of the station, an emergency-lit control room bathed in red shadows. People ran, carrying wounded soldiers, shouting, trying to repair broken systems. And then, Jake's heart stopped. On the display, a figure appeared, small, quick, wearing a torn coalition uniform far too large, a helmet tilted awkwardly on their head. Their hands flew across controls, restoring power, activating backup defenses. Admiral Kor's voice was calm, steady. Here, we see the first appearance of our unknown warrior. Note the size. Military experts estimate 12 to 13 years of age. The room filled with shocked whispers. Lisa Chen glanced at Jake, her brow furrowing as she saw his pale face. "Jake, are you okay?" she whispered. He couldn't answer. His chest felt crushed. His secret was unraveling. On the display, the small figure sprinted down a corridor, climbed into a damaged fighter, and launched into space. The ship weaved between enemy fire with impossible skill. Instead of firing weapons, the child overloaded the power core, ejecting at the last instant, turning the fighter into a living missile. The hive destroyer exploded. The cadets gasped. Even the proud Zapirians leaned forward, astonished. Admiral Kor's voice dropped lower, more intense. This human, yes, a human, defied every expectation, tactical decisions beyond logic, reflexes that no elder race could match. The coalition's retreat became victory. A Koran cadet rumbled in disbelief. "Impossible, a child, a human child." "Impossible," Admiral Kor repeated, "until you see it with your own eyes." He paused, turning toward his console. "And today," he said, "you will see more. For the first time, we will attempt facial recognition of the warrior, cross-referencing with current Academy records." Jake's blood turned to ice. His whole body trembled. "No, no, please." The room was silent. The computer hummed, lights blinking, red, yellow, green, processing. Lisa glanced at Jake again, confusion turning to realization. Her eyes widened. The whispers grew louder. Aliens shifted uneasily in their seats, some leaning forward in curiosity, others glancing around as though the truth was already in the air. Admiral Kor's voice cut through the silence. "Computer, identify the subject." The room seemed to hold its breath. The computer chimed. "Match found. Morrison Jake, species, human, confidence level 99.97%. The silence lasted 3 long seconds. Then, every alien in the room turned at once. 200 eyes, glowing, staring, focusing on him. Jake Morrison sat frozen in his chair, every secret he had ever tried to hide stripped away in an instant. The truth was out. The unknown warrior of Kepler Station wasn't a legend. He was sitting in the back of the classroom. The silence shattered like glass. Dozens of alien voices rose at once, a cacophony of disbelief and outrage. High-pitched Zapirian tones clashed with the deep growls of the Korans. Musical trills of the Varians rose and fell like arguments layered atop one another. "Impossible. A human child. This must be a mistake. Lies, fabricated footage." Jake sat frozen, unable to move. His secret was out. Admiral Kor's 4 eyes fixed on him, unblinking, unreadable. "Cadet Morrison," he said, his voice low but carrying through the chaos, "stand." Jake's legs trembled as he rose from his seat. 200 alien faces turned to follow his every movement. Some glared, others gaped in awe, and a few looked at him with something worse than fear, calculation. A Zapirian cadet named Kess, her face sharp and proud, pointed at him. You sit in the back of every class, you never speak unless forced. And now we are told you are the warrior of Kepler Station. You expect us to believe this." More voices erupted. A Koran slammed his fist onto his desk, shaking the floor. "Deception. No human child could defeat hive destroyers. The coalition hides something." Lisa Chen's voice cut through, softer but firm. "Stop it. You all saw the footage. He doesn't need to prove anything. He was there." Tony Rodriguez shifted uneasily beside her, glancing at Jake with wide eyes. He looked like he'd just realized he didn't know his friend at all. Admiral Kor raised one hand for silence. Slowly, the noise died down. The Admiral's expression remained stern, but there was a flicker of something else, respect or perhaps suspicion. "Cadet Morrison," he said, "explain yourself." Jake swallowed hard, his throat dry. He wanted to lie, to deny it, to vanish into the shadows as he had for years. But the hollow display still floated above them, showing his younger self flying that broken fighter, ejecting at the last second, turning the tide of battle. There was no denying it. His voice was quiet, but every ear strained to hear. "It's true. I was on Kepler station during the attack. I fought. I survived, that's all." Whispers surged again, like wind through dry grass. Admiral Kor's eyes narrowed. "Your academy records list no combat service, no military history. They state you enrolled from civilian education on Earth Colony 7. And yet," he gestured toward the frozen hollow image of Jake as a child, "the evidence says otherwise." Jake forced himself to meet the Admiral's gaze. "The records are correct, sir. I wasn't enlisted. I was just there when it happened." A massive Koran cadet named Drex rumbled angrily. "You fought like a seasoned warrior. That is not the skill of a frightened civilian child." Jake's chest tightened. Memories surged, the smell of smoke, the screams, the desperate need to do something. He remembered calculations flashing in his head like instinct, as if his mind had been built for it. He hated remembering. Lisa spoke up again. "Admiral, he doesn't owe us details. He was a kid. He saved lives. Isn't that enough?" Admiral Kor's gaze softened on Lisa for a moment, but returned to Jake. "Perhaps, but the Coalition does not deal in legends. It deals in truth. And the truth is that you possess abilities no human should, abilities no cadet should hide." Jake's lips parted, but before he could answer, the Admiral pressed a button on his console. The hollow display flickered, changing to show more footage, close angles of the young Jake in the cockpit, sweat on his face, eyes blazing with impossible focus. The gasps in the room grew louder. "Observe," Admiral Kor said, his voice cutting into the tension. "The child improvises a suicide run with precision, not luck, not instinct, precision." The footage showed the fighter's power core overloading, the eject sequence timed down to a fraction of a second. The destroyer exploded. Coalition ships regrouped. The tide turned. The Admiral paused the display and looked at the class. No trained officer could have done this under such pressure, and yet this human child did. Jake's hands shook at his sides. He could feel the stares burning into him. He wanted to scream, to run, to disappear into the walls of Nexus Prime. But there was no running from this, not anymore. The class ended in chaos. Aliens whispered as they filed out, sneaking glances at Jake as though he were radioactive. Some eyes shone with awe, others with fear, more than a few with hatred. Lisa stayed close, giving him worried looks, but Tony walked quickly ahead, not meeting Jake's gaze. Jake remained seated until the room emptied. Admiral Kor stood at the front, silent, watching. When the last cadet left, the Admiral activated privacy shields around the classroom. The air grew still, heavy. "Sit," Admiral Kor said. Jake obeyed, sinking into his chair like a prisoner waiting for judgment. The Admiral stepped closer, folding his arms. His 4 eyes bore into Jake's soul. "You have hidden much, Cadet Morrison, but the galaxy does not forgive secrets easily." Jake's throat tightened. "I didn't want this. I never asked for it." "Yet you lived it," Kor replied, "and now you must answer for it." The Admiral's voice softened, almost curious. "Tell me, how did a human child achieve what even elder species could not?" Jake's hands clenched into fists. He wanted to refuse. He wanted to protect what little normalcy he had left, but he saw no escape. His voice trembled, "Because I wasn't normal." Admiral Kor tilted his head. "Explain." Jake closed his eyes, the memories flooding back like a storm. "Kepler wasn't just a research station. My parents worked there. They weren't ordinary scientists. They were part of a classified project, studying human enhancement." The Admiral's eyes widened slightly. "Genetic enhancement." Jake nodded. "Yes, my parents underwent modifications before I was born. Reflexes, pattern recognition, neural processing. It passed on to me. I didn't want it. But when the hive came, I had no choice. My brain just worked differently. It was survival, nothing else." The Admiral paced slowly, deep in thought. "So it is true. Humanity has been experimenting, creating warriors in secret. Jake's voice cracked. No, that's not what it was supposed to be. My parents said it was about survival, leveling the field. Humans are weaker than Korans, slower than Zapirians, blind compared to Varians. The project was supposed to help us compete, not to make weapons. Admiral Kor stopped packing and looked down at him. And yet, Cadet Morrison, you became the greatest weapon the Coalition has seen in a generation. Jake's stomach twisted. He hated the word, weapon. That wasn't who he was. He wanted to scream it at the Admiral, but his voice stuck in his throat. Instead, he whispered, I just wanted to be normal. For a long moment, the room was silent. The Admiral's gaze softened, and for the first time, Jake saw something human in those alien eyes, compassion. But then the Admiral's voice hardened again. Normal is no longer an option, Cadet, not after today. He leaned closer. Word will spread, the Coalition will know, and once governments learn that a human child defeated the Hive, they will demand answers. They will demand you. Jake felt a chill crawl down his spine. He had spent years hiding in shadows, pretending to be ordinary. Now the galaxy itself was coming for him. Admiral Kor stepped back, his voice final. Prepare yourself, Morrison. You may wish to be a cadet, but the galaxy will see you as something far greater and far more dangerous. Jake realized with sickening clarity that his quiet life was over. The galaxy would not let him remain hidden, and soon he would have to face not only the Coalition, but governments demanding he be handed over. 3 days passed, 3 days that felt longer than the 6-day battle at Kepler Station. Jake Morrison had once been invisible at Nexus Prime. Now he was unavoidable. Whispers followed him down every corridor. Alien cadets paused mid-conversation when he walked by, their eyes sharp with curiosity or fear. Some shifted aside as if he were dangerous to touch. Others leaned in close to watch, like he was a rare specimen on display. The cafeteria was the worst. Jake carried his tray through the endless rows of tables, but wherever he sat, a wide circle of empty seats formed around him. Entire groups stood up and moved away, leaving him alone with his food untouched. Tony Rodriguez, once his friend, now avoided him. He still smiled when they crossed paths, but it was thin, nervous, the smile of someone who wasn't sure if they were looking at a person or a weapon. Only Lisa Chen stayed. She sat across from Jake at every meal, her defiance clear, daring anyone to say something. Her presence was the only thing that kept him from breaking. You've stopped eating, Lisa said, pushing noodles around her tray. You'll collapse before the Hive even tries again. Jake poked at his untouched ration cube. Hard to have an appetite when everyone looks at you like a monster. Lisa's eyes softened. Not a monster, a survivor, a hero. Jake laughed bitterly. Heroes don't have nightmares. Heroes don't wake up sweating, hearing the sound of metal tearing and people screaming. Lisa reached across the table, her hand brushing his. Heroes do, they just don't let it stop them. Jake looked down. For a moment he let her words sink in, but deep inside guilt chewed at him. He had saved lives, yes, but at what cost? That night, Admiral Kor summoned him to his private office. The room was small and severe, lined with star charts and dusty books. Privacy shields hummed faintly, cutting them off from prying ears. Jake stood stiffly as the Admiral studied him with 4 steady eyes. Sit, Morrison, Kor said. Jake obeyed, his chest tightened. He felt like a prisoner awaiting judgment. The Admiral leaned forward, resting his heavy hands on the desk. The Coalition command knows of your revelation, so do half the governments in the galaxy. Already messages pour in questions, demands, accusations. Some believe the footage is fabricated. Others demand access to whatever program created you. Still others, his expression darkened. Others want you handed over. Jake's heart sank. Handed over. Yes, to be examined, studied, dissected if they think it will reveal the truth. Jake's fists clenched, his nails dug into his palms. I'm not an experiment, I'm not, his voice broke. I'm not a weapon. Admiral Kor's gaze softened slightly, but his words were unflinching. Perhaps not, but the galaxy will not see the frightened boy at Kepler Station. They will see the warrior who destroyed Hive destroyers and commanded fleets. They will see power, and power never goes unnoticed. Jake felt the weight pressing down on him. The weight of secrets, of lies, of expectations. My parents never meant for this, Jake whispered. They weren't trying to make soldiers, they wanted humans to survive, to stand a chance. We're weaker, slower, smaller than almost every species out here. The enhancements were supposed to even the odds. Tell me, Core said, voice calm, exactly what enhancements? Jake hesitated. He hated speaking the words aloud. They made him feel less human. Reflexes, coordination, neural processing. He swallowed hard. My brain, it works differently under stress. It's like time slows down. I can see outcomes, calculate risks, predict movements. I don't think, I just know. Core studied him with an unreadable expression. You describe something beyond genetic alteration, more like a living computer. Jake's stomach twisted. Maybe, I don't know, I never asked for it. It was just how I was born. The Admiral leaned back. His expression was grave. Do you understand the danger, Morrison? If what you say is true, you are not just enhanced. You may be the first of a new kind of human, a kind that could rival elder species, a kind the galaxy may fear more than the hive. Jake's breath caught. He wanted to argue, to deny it. But deep inside, a part of him knew it was true. He had felt it during the battle, the way his mind had stretched beyond human limits, the way choices unfolded like a map only he could see. Fear surged in his chest. Not fear of the hive, not fear of dying, fear of what he was becoming. I don't want to be different, Jake whispered. I just want to be normal. The Admiral's voice softened. Normal is a dream, Morrison, but perhaps purpose is still possible. The next morning, the Academy's great hall filled with noise. Hundreds of cadets gathered as a coalition official appeared on the hollow screen. His silver robes shimmered, his voice amplified across the room. Attention, cadets. By order of the Galactic Council, an investigation has been opened into human enhancement programs. Humanity stands accused of concealing military research in violation of coalition treaties. Further, questions remain regarding the identity and loyalty of Cadet Jake Morrison. The crowd erupted. Violation of treaties. Humans cannot be trusted. He saved thousands. He deceived us. Jake stood at the edge of the hall, Lisa at his side, absorbing the storm. Every eye turned toward him. Some were wide with awe, others narrowed with suspicion. A few burned with outright hostility. The official continued. Cadet Morrison will remain under coalition protection while the investigation proceeds. Any attempt to interfere will be considered treason. Further announcements will follow. The hollow screen faded. The great hall buzzed with fury. Some cadets surged toward Jake, questions spilling out in a dozen languages. Others backed away as if he carried a disease. Lisa pulled him back. Jake, don't, they'll eat you alive. But the crowd closed in. A Zapirian cadet shouted, how many more of you exist? A Corin growled, were we allies or test subjects in your experiment? A Varian sneered, do you think we will let humans surpass us? Jake's pulse thundered in his ears. He wanted to vanish, to shout, to run. Then Admiral Core's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Enough. The crowd fell silent. The Admiral stood tall, his gray skin gleaming in the hall's light. His 4 eyes scanned the cadets with a force that silenced even the boldest. Cadet Morrison's abilities may unsettle you, Core thundered. But do not forget the truth. Without him, Kepler Station would have fallen. Without him, thousands would be dead. And without him, the hive might already be at your doors. The silence was heavy, uneasy. Core's voice dropped lower but carried across the hall. You may fear him, you may envy him, but you cannot deny what he is, a defender of life, a soldier of the coalition, and a cadet under my command. The hall buzzed again, quieter now, but the whispers lingered, the looks lingered. Jake's secret was no longer his. His life was no longer his. And yet, as he looked at Lisa standing fiercely at his side, and Admiral Core shielding him before the galaxy, a flicker of something sparked inside him. Not fear, not despair, but the beginning of resolve. That night, as Jake lay awake in his bunk, a quiet chime sounded at his door. He sat up, come in. Lisa stepped inside, her expression grim. You need to see this. She handed him her datapad. On the screen, headlines scrolled in dozens of alien languages. Each carried his name. Each accused humanity of lies, of experiments, of betrayal. But one headline froze his blood cold. Breaking, hive remnants detected in Outer Rim. Coalition divided on response. Jake's hands shook as he read it. The hive were back. and the galaxy was paralyzed. Jake realized with a sick twist in his gut. While the galaxy argued about him, the Hive were moving again, and this time the Coalition might be too divided to stop them. The Academy was no longer a place of study. It had become a storm. Everywhere Jake went, the air was thick with whispers. Alien cadets huddled in corners, glancing his way. Conversations halted when he entered a room. Hallways that had once been filled with laughter and arguments now grew quiet when his footsteps echoed through them. He was no longer Jake Morrison, quiet human cadet. He was the warrior of Kepler Station. Some cadets watched him with awe, whispering words like legend or savior. Others shrank back as if he carried a deadly disease. And a few, more dangerous than the rest, watched him with narrow eyes, envy burning hot. Lisa Chen remained his anchor. She walked with him openly, sitting beside him in the cafeteria despite the empty ring of tables around them. "Let them stare," she said one afternoon, stabbing at her noodles with chopsticks. "They're just jealous you did something they never could." Jake barely touched his food. "They're not jealous, they're scared." "Good, maybe they should be." Jake shook his head. "No, that's the problem. If they're scared of me, it's only a matter of time before someone decides I shouldn't be here at all." Lisa set her chopsticks down and leaned closer. "Then we make sure they see you for what you are, not a weapon, not a monster, just Jake." Jake wanted to believe her, but the looks around the cafeteria told a different story. 2 days later, Admiral Core summoned him again, this time to a council chamber inside Nexus Prime itself. The room was vast, its ceiling a dome of glass that revealed the stars outside. Representatives of dozens of species filled the chamber, their robes and uniforms flashing with color. The air hummed with tension. Jake entered with Lisa at his side, feeling every eye pierce into him. At the center stood a holographic display, alive with shifting headlines. Each headline was worse than the last. "Humans hiding super soldier program." "Genetic weapons, breach of coalition law." "Can Earth be trusted?" Admiral Core stood near the display, his hands folded behind his back. His voice carried across the chamber. "Cadet Morrison's revelation has triggered a crisis," he said. "Several member species demand answers. Some demand he be removed from the Academy. Others call for his immediate transfer into military custody." A Varian diplomat, tall and thin with 4 luminous eyes, stepped forward. "Admiral, you cannot keep this human child here. His presence destabilizes the Academy. Worse, it destabilizes the Coalition itself." A Coran general rumbled from the other side. "Nonsense. The boy saved Kepler Station. We should honor him, not exile him. He belongs at the Academy." The Varian hissed. "Honor him? He is proof that humanity deceived us all. They brought untested enhancements into our ranks. What other secrets do they hide?" The chamber erupted in argument. Voices overlapped, some calling for exile, others for protection, still others for control. Jake stood at the center of the storm, his chest tight. They weren't even talking to him. They were talking about him like he was a weapon on the table, not a person in the room. Lisa bristled at his side. "Say something," she whispered. Jake shook his head. His throat was dry, he didn't trust his voice. But Admiral Core's deep tone silenced the chamber. "Enough, the Hive remnants have been sighted near the outer rim. They regroup, they prepare." His 4 eyes scanned the assembly. "And here you argue like children over a single cadet. If you waste time, the Hive will return stronger than before." The silence was sharp. The Varian's voice was quiet but pointed. "All the more reason not to allow humanity to keep secrets. If they create more like him, we face not one Hive, but another rising power." Jake's stomach twisted. The words cut deep because he knew they weren't entirely wrong. There had been more families on Kepler, children born with enhancements. He didn't know if any survived, but if the truth came out. Admiral Core spoke again. "The Council must decide how to proceed. Until then, Cadet Morrison remains under Academy protection." His voice hardened, "And under my command." The Varian's eyes flared, but he said nothing more. The session ended. Jake and Lisa left in silence, but as the chamber doors closed behind them, Jake exhaled heavily. "I'm not a weapon," he whispered. Lisa touched his arm. "Then stop letting them talk about you like one. Prove you're not." Jake wanted to believe her, but in his heart he knew proving it would not be so simple. The academy grew more hostile in the days that followed. Cadets who once ignored him now whispered openly. A group of Zapirians cornered him in the corridor one night, their silver eyes flashing. "You're dangerous," one hissed. "The council should expel you before you bring war to us all." Jake stood his ground. "I never asked for any of this." "Lies," another spat. "No one destroys hive destroyers by accident." Before the confrontation could escalate, Admiral Kor appeared at the far end of the corridor, his presence enough to scatter the Zapirians. But Jake felt the sting. The whispers were turning into threats. One evening, while Jake sat in his quarters staring out at the stars, Lisa burst in. "They've sent you a guard," she said, out of breath. Jake frowned. "A guard." Footsteps followed. A tall alien entered, armor gleaming, face hidden behind a mirrored visor. "Cadet Morrison," the soldier said, voice metallic through a translator. "By order of the Coalition, you are assigned protective detail. I will accompany you at all times." Jake's blood ran cold. Protective detail or surveillance? The soldier didn't answer. Lisa's fists clenched. "This is wrong. They're treating you like a prisoner." Jake looked down. "Maybe that's what I am." That night, he dreamed of Kepler again. The explosions, the fire, the screams, his hands on controls too big for him, the impossible calm as his mind calculated what adults could not. The moment he ejected from the fighter, leaving death behind him. He woke in a cold sweat, his chest heaving. And then the comm alarm rang. Jake stumbled out of bed, opening the channel. Admiral Kor's face appeared on the screen, grim. "Cadet Morrison, report to the command deck immediately." Jake rubbed his eyes. "What's happening?" The Admiral's 4 eyes glowed like storm clouds. "The Hive have struck again, and this time they're winning." Jake's stomach turned to stone. The galaxy might argue about him, but the Hive weren't waiting. The war he thought he'd left behind was rising again, and this time they expected him to stop it. The command deck of Nexus Prime was alive with chaos. Hollow screens flickered across the vast chamber, each one showing disaster in real time. Hive ships ripping through Coalition defenses, colonies burning, rescue beacons screaming for help. Dozens of officers and aides moved between consoles, their voices sharp and urgent in 100 different languages. Jake stood at the center, heart pounding. Lisa was beside him, pale but steady, while Admiral Kor loomed over the tactical table, his 4 dark eyes scanning the unfolding catastrophe. The Admiral's voice carried through the storm. "The Hive remnants have struck the valley's frontier, 3 stations already destroyed. The Coalition fleet is faltering. If Valleys falls, the Hive will have a direct path to our core worlds." Jake stared at the images, ships exploding in silence, their wreckage drifting like bones. The Hive hadn't grown weaker after Kepler. They had adapted, learned. Lisa whispered, "It's starting all over again." Admiral Kor turned to Jake. "Cadet Morrison, you know what I am about to ask." Jake's throat closed. He already knew. The Admiral's gaze, the desperate flicker of hope in the officers around him, it was all too familiar. "No," Jake said, shaking his head. "I can't, I'm not that person anymore, I'm not." "You are," Kor interrupted, his voice heavy with certainty. "You are the warrior of Kepler's station, and right now the Coalition needs that warrior again." Jake felt the old fear clawing up his chest. The fear of being seen not as Jake Morrison, cadet, but as something else, something inhuman, a weapon. "I was just a kid," Jake whispered. "A scared kid trying to survive. Everyone thinks I was a genius, but I was just lucky." The Admiral leaned closer, his voice low. "Luck does not destroy Hive destroyers. You were more than luck. You were decisive. You were relentless, and you gave others hope when all was lost." Jake's hands shook. He wanted to argue, to deny it. But the truth pressed down like gravity. He remembered that strange calm, the way his mind had calculated every angle, every risk, every possibility. It hadn't felt like luck. It had felt inevitable. Lisa's voice cut softly into his storm. "Jake, you can't hide from this forever. The Hive won't stop just because you want to be normal. You have a choice. Either stand aside and let more people die or fight." Jake looked at her at the strength in her eyes. She wasn't asking him to be a weapon. She was asking him to be himself, the boy who had fought to save lives because no one else could. He exhaled shakily. "If I do this, I don't want to do it alone." Admiral Kor straightened. "You won't, not this time." Hours later, preparations began. Jake was assigned to the fleet bound for Valleys. Lisa volunteered to serve as a systems officer, refusing to let him go without her. And to Jake's surprise, one more stepped forward. Vex, the sharp-eyed Zapirian cadet who had once doubted him most. "You fought the Hive and lived," Vex said, her voice calm but steady. "My people respect results, not myths. If you go into battle again, I go too." Jake blinked, unsure how to respond. Vex's silver eyes narrowed. "Do not mistake this for loyalty to you, human. It is loyalty to survival. If fighting beside you increases my odds of living, I will do it." Lisa smirked. "That's probably as close to a compliment as you'll ever get from her." Jake gave a weak laugh. "I'll take it." The Coalition fleet launched with grim silence. Hundreds of ships slipped from Nexus Prime's docks, their drives igniting against the black canvas of space. Jake stood on the observation deck of the cruiser Resolute, watching the stars blur into streaks as the jump engines engaged. He felt the weight of a galaxy pressing down on him. Every eye, every expectation, every whisper, watching, waiting, demanding he save them again. Lisa joined him, arms folded. "You're quiet." Jake's voice was low. "If I fail, people die." "If you don't try, people still die," she said firmly. "At least this way they have a chance." Her words steadied him, just a little. The Valley system was already aflame when they arrived. The jump shattered into reality with alarms blaring. Hive ships swarmed the system, black and jagged like insects, their weapons carving through Coalition defenses. Debris fields stretched across the void, lit by the glow of burning stations. The Resolute shook as Hive fire streaked past. Jake gripped the tactical rail, his stomach lurching. Admiral Kor's voice thundered across the bridge. "Form defensive perimeter, protect the refugee transports at all costs." Coalition ships surged forward, unleashing waves of plasma and rail fire. The Hive swarmed, answering with merciless precision. The battle unfolded in chaotic violence, ships colliding, weapons flashing. Jake's enhanced mind flickered alive. His pulse slowed, the chaos sharpening into patterns. Angles, probabilities, options. His fear dulled, replaced by the cold, calculating calm he had once hated and now desperately needed. "Admiral," Jake said suddenly, his voice clear, "the Hive are driving us toward the gravity well. They'll pin the fleet against Valley's Prime's pull. We need to shift formation now." Officers blinked, Kor's 4 eyes locked on him, for a moment silence. Then the Admiral barked. "You heard him. Adjust formation, delta curve, now." Ships moved. The fleet twisted like a living blade, sliding free of the Hive's trap just as their web closed. Coalition cannons flared, cutting through the Hive flank. A cheer rose across the bridge. Jake's chest tightened. He was back in it whether he wanted to be or not. But then the Hive changed tactics. From the swarm, a new ship emerged, larger than the destroyers Jake remembered, its body pulsing with a sickly violet glow. Organic plating rippled as if alive. Its weapons shimmered with energy Jake had never seen before. Lisa's voice trembled. "What is that?" Sensors screamed warnings. The officer at the console shouted, "Unknown Hive signature, energy output beyond destroyer class. It's like a living battleship." The massive Hive vessel opened its maw. A wave of violet energy pulsed outward, sweeping across the battlefield. Coalition shields flickered, shattered. Ships buckled under the blast, their hulls peeling like paper. The bridge filled with alarms. Officers shouted in panic. The Resolute shook violently, its lights dimming. Jake's blood ran cold. His enhanced mind spun, calculating, analyzing. He saw one truth: the Hive had evolved. "They've built a weapon to counter us," Jake whispered. "They've built it to counter me." The new Hive battleship loomed over the battlefield, its energy weapon charging again. Jake realized with horror this wasn't just another Hive attack. This was something worse, something designed to end everything he had become. The Hive battleship dominated the stars. Its monstrous frame pulsed like living flesh, fused with metal, violet energy coursing through veins of alien alloy. Each time it opened its maw, the void lit with waves of power strong enough to rip apart entire squadrons. On the bridge of the Resolute, alarms wailed. Officers shouted reports in frantic bursts. One ship after another fell to the new weapon, their hulls shattering like glass. Jake's gut twisted. He had seen Hive destroyers before, brutal, fast, efficient. But this was something different, something worse. Lisa clutched the rail beside him. "Jake, if it fires again." "I know," he cut in, his voice sharper than he meant. His mind was already racing, gears grinding at impossible speed. Angles, energy patterns, probabilities, but nothing fit, nothing looked like survival. The Admiral's deep voice boomed across the bridge. "Fleet, hold formation, all power to forward shields." Another pulse roared outward. The Resolute shuddered, lights flickering as the shields cracked under the force. Sparks rained from a console nearby, showering an officer who cried out in pain. Jake's pulse slowed. His enhanced perception slid into place, the battlefield freezing into sharp, dissected fragments. Every ship's position, every hive trajectory, every energy fluctuation from that monstrous weapon, it all unfolded before him. And still no path to victory. Unless... Jake's breath caught. "Admiral," he said, his voice steady now. "We can't fight that thing head-on. It's drawing power from the swarm itself. Every hive ship is feeding it energy. Cut the swarm, the weapon collapses." Admiral Core turned his 4 eyes on him, unreadable. "Explain." Jake pointed at the display. "Look at the rhythm of its pulses. It's not constant, it's staggered. The smaller hive ships beam energy into it like blood vessels feeding a heart. If we disrupt the supply, the battleship bleeds out." The bridge fell silent. Officers stared at Jake like he had spoken madness. Finally, Vex, the Zapirian cadet, her silver eyes gleaming, stepped forward from the tactical station. "He's right, look at the flux patterns." Her long fingers danced across controls, magnifying the display. "The smaller hive craft synchronize seconds before each pulse, sever the connections." "And the monster dies," Jake finished. Admiral Core studied the 2 cadets, then gave a sharp nod. "Then we sever the connections. Fleet, target hive relays, ignore the battleship." The order rippled across the comms. Coalition ships turned, cannons blazing, striking at the smaller hive craft. One by one, the feeding vessels erupted in fire. The battleship staggered, its glow dimmed, its maw closed. Cheers erupted on the Resolute. For the first time in hours, hope flickered. But Jake's calm mind didn't celebrate. He saw the counters already forming. The hive weren't finished, not yet. The battleship roared. The violet glow surged back to life, but this time the pulse didn't spread outward. Instead, it concentrated into a spear of energy, thin, sharp, precise. Jake's blood froze. "Admiral." The spear lanced across space, cutting clean through a coalition dreadnought. The massive ship split in 2, its debris tumbling like burning islands. The shockwave rattled the Resolute violently. The bridge went dead quiet. Lisa whispered, "It adapted." Jake clenched his fists. "It's learning faster than before." Vex's silver eyes flashed. "Then so must we." The battle dragged on, brutal and merciless. Coalition ships weaved and fired, carving through hive lines, but the battleship adapted each time, its weapon shifting forms, pulse, spear, wave, unpredictable, unstoppable. Jake directed what ships he could, his voice cutting across comms with crisp orders. His strange calm carried him through, weaving probability and instinct into commands others couldn't question. Squadron 3, break high left, cut the feeder ships. Transport shields failing, redirect fighters to cover their retreat. Admiral, pull the frigates back, they're being baited into crossfire. Each call saved lives, each call bought time, but time was running out. Hours later, the coalition fleet was ragged, broken, ships burned in orbit over valleys. The hive battleship still loomed, wounded but not destroyed. On the bridge, exhaustion weighed heavy. Officers' faces were drawn, voices hoarse. Lisa's hands trembled over her console, though she kept her chin high. Jake leaned over the tactical map, his enhanced mind spinning to its limits. Options collapsed one by one, nothing worked. Unless... He saw it, a terrible, reckless idea. He closed his eyes, his heart thundered. He had done this once before, at Kepler. He whispered, "Not again." But the battlefield offered no other answer. Admiral Core loomed beside him. "You found something." Jake opened his eyes, meeting the Admiral's gaze. "I can end it, but I'll need a fighter." Lisa spun toward him, her voice sharp. "No, not again. You nearly died last time." Jake forced a grim smile. "Nearly, but not quite." The Admiral studied him for a long, heavy moment, his 4 eyes narrowed. Explain. Jake pointed at the display of the battleship. Its core is unstable. If I can overload a fighter's reactor and drive it straight into the core vent, the blast should tear it apart from within. Lisa's face went pale. That's suicide. Jake's smile faded. Not if I time it right. The words echoed, not if I time it right. He remembered being 13, his tiny hands gripping the controls of a broken fighter, ejection timing down to a breath. He had survived then. Could he survive now? Lisa grabbed his arm, her voice breaking. Jake, you're not alone anymore. You don't have to carry this by yourself. Vex stepped forward, silver eyes sharp. If anyone is to fly such a mission, it should not be you alone, human. My people train for precision strikes. I will fly with you. Jake's chest tightened. For so long, he had been the hidden warrior, the one burdened with secrets, the one who fought alone. Now Lisa and Vex both stood ready to face death beside him. His throat was tight when he spoke. Then we do this together. Preparations were swift. Jake suited up in coalition armor, the weight familiar, unwanted, yet necessary. Lisa worked furiously at the console, rigging 2 fighters for reactor overload. Vex calibrated targeting systems with perfect precision. Admiral Kor watched, silent but approving. This is not the mission of cadets, he said finally, but perhaps it is the mission of warriors. Jake strapped into the cockpit, his fingers brushing the controls. He felt the old fear surging again, the fear of fire, of screams, of being 13 years old and carrying a galaxy's weight. But this time he wasn't alone. Lisa's voice crackled through the comm. Jake, you better come back or I'll kill you myself. Vex's voice followed, calm and sharp. Focus, human, you will not be allowed to die before me. Jake smiled faintly. For the first time in days, it felt real. The fighters launched into the void, engines flaring against the black. The battleship loomed ahead, its violet glow pulsing like a heartbeat. Jake's calm mind opened wide. Every movement, every risk, every path unfolded before him. This was it. Jake's fighter dove straight toward the Hive battleship's glowing core, reactor primed for overload. Behind him, Vex followed. Ahead of him, the maw of the monster opened wide. And Jake knew with absolute certainty, one mistake meant death. The Hive battleship filled Jake's canopy. Its vast, writhing hull glowed with violet veins, pulsing like a living heart. Energy built within its maw, a storm of power ready to erase anything in its path. Jake's fighter shook as he tightened his grip on the controls. Behind him, Vex's craft mirrored his course, her voice calm over the comm. Stay aligned, human. If we drift, the core will devour us before we strike. Lisa's voice followed, tight with fear but steady. I'll guide you from here. I've linked both your reactors to my console. If anything goes wrong, I'll override and detonate them myself. Jake's chest tightened. Lisa. Don't argue, just fly. The fighters streaked forward, weaving through debris and Hive fire. Coalition ships peeled away to clear a path, their cannons blazing. The battleship roared, violet energy spilling outward, ripping apart stragglers. But Jake saw the patterns, the heartbeat of the beast, the timing between pulses. He threaded his fighter through the gaps with impossible precision, Vex locked in formation beside him. The voice in his head, the one he'd feared since Kepler, was loud and clear now. Left 3 degrees, thrust at 42%. Delay 2 seconds or you die. He obeyed, every move exact, every second stretched into eternity. The battleship's core vent loomed ahead, a churning vortex of light, alive with violent energy. Lisa's voice cracked through the comm. You're almost there. Reactor stability at critical. Jake, once you cross the vent threshold, you'll have less than 5 seconds before detonation. Plenty of time, Jake muttered, though his hands trembled. Vex's voice was calm, almost serene. No room for doubt now, human, we strike as one. The vent swallowed them. Inside, the light was blinding. Energy waves lashed at their fighters, tearing chunks from armor. Warnings screamed across Jake's display. Heat spiked. Systems failed. Reactor overload sequence engaged, Lisa's voice said, distorted by static. Jake, eject on my mark. The calm in his mind sharpened to a razor's edge. Every fragment of data, every flicker of the core's violent rhythms, every possible outcome, it all laid bare before him. He knew the exact second, the only second. Now, Jake shouted. He yanked the eject handle. The canopy blasted open, his seat firing into the violent glow. For a breathless moment, he was weightless, spinning in a storm of light. Below, his fighter plunged deeper into the core. The reactor detonated. The vent exploded outward in a shockwave of violet fire. Vex's fighter followed, her eject module launching in perfect synchrony. Her craft struck a different vent, its overload joining Jake in a chain reaction. The battleship convulsed, violet light flared too bright to look at, then silence. And finally collapse. The Hive battleship tore itself apart, its vast body unraveling in molten chunks, fragments scattering into the void. The swarm faltered, their connection severed. Coalition cannons tore into them, cutting them down one by one until the battlefield was littered with burning wreckage. The Hive had been broken. The rescue pods swept through the debris field. Jake floated in his suit, breath ragged, body trembling from exhaustion. He barely registered when a tractor beam locked onto him, pulling him inside. When the hatch hissed open, Lisa was there, her eyes wet, her hands gripping his arms. "You did it," she whispered. "You actually did it." Jake managed a weak smile. "Told you plenty of time." Vex's pod arrived moments later. She stepped out, her silver eyes gleaming, a faint crack in her usually sharp composure. Acceptable performance, human, barely. Jake let out a tired laugh, the sound breaking into a cough. "I'll take it." The fleet limped back to Nexus Prime battered but victorious. News spread faster than light. The Hive had unleashed a new weapon, and humanity's hidden warrior had destroyed it. For days, Jake was paraded through halls filled with applause. Cadets who once avoided him now reached out to touch his hand, to see his face, to whisper his name like legend. Some looked with awe, others with envy, but none with dismissal. Lisa stayed close, shielding him from the worst of the attention. Vex walked behind him like a silent shadow, ensuring no one mistook admiration for weakness. Admiral Kor addressed the Academy in the Great Hall, his voice echoing through the chamber. Cadet Morrison's courage has once again preserved the lives of thousands. Let this be a reminder, not of humanity's secrets, nor of its experiments, but of its will. Against fear, against doubt, against annihilation, humanity fights, humanity endures. The hall thundered with applause. Jake lowered his gaze. He didn't feel like a hero. He felt tired, worn, human. Later, alone with Lisa and Admiral Kor, Jake finally spoke what had weighed on him since the battle. "I can't keep living like this. As a secret, as a weapon, the truth is out. Everyone knows now. If I'm going to keep fighting, it has to be on my terms." Lisa touched his arm, her voice soft. "So what are your terms?" Jake looked out the viewport at the stars. Endless, cold, and alive with possibility. "I'm not a weapon. I'm not a monster. I'm not even a legend. I'm Jake Morrison, and if I have to fight, it won't be because they command me. It'll be because people need me." Admiral Kor studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Then that is how the galaxy will know you, not as the child of Kepler Station, not as an experiment, but as a cadet who chose to fight." Jake exhaled, a weight lifting. For the first time in years, he felt not just fear, but choice. Weeks passed, the coalition began rebuilding. The Academy resumed its lessons, though the cadets watched Jake differently now. Some still whispered, but many nodded in respect. Lisa still sat with him at every meal, laughing too loudly at his dry jokes. Vex still trained beside him, sparring with ruthless precision, though Jake suspected it was her way of showing loyalty. And Jake still dreamed of fire, still woke sweating, haunted by the faces of those he couldn't save. But he also dreamed of stars, of futures where humanity was more than weak allies or suspicious newcomers. He dreamed of a place where being Jake Morrison was enough. One evening, while Jake studied alone in the library, Lisa slid a datapad across the table. He frowned and glanced at the display. Encrypted files, Coalition Intelligence Reports. The title froze his blood. Project Horizon, Surviving Enhancement Colonies. Jake looked up sharply. Lisa's face was grave. "You weren't the only one, Jake," she whispered. "There are others hidden alive." Jake stared at the screen, his pulse racing. He had spent years believing he was alone, the last remnant of a secret humanity buried in fear. Now the truth was in his hands. He wasn't alone. and the galaxy wasn't ready for what came next.